The hotfix patch has been out for almost 2 weeks now. In fact, I believe a little bit over 2 weeks, and people have started getting settled with the current primary or sidearm meta. I brought some varied minds of the PvP community together here to discuss how they are adapting to the changes, and also to see if this patch has actually met the goals that Bungie listed. I'd like to start off with some brief introductions. You guys all know me, but I am joined today with two very well-known PvP players. TV, take it off.
Yo, my name is TrueVanguard. You may or may not be familiar with me. If you're not, that's totally fine because I'm excessively mediocre, but I'm happy to be here today.
And we got Ninja Noel here, a fellow shape hater, a Titan that goes way too fast and sometimes likes to, do some things in PvP that rub people just the right way.
Oh, it rubs me all the right way when I see you just go fast. Just so fast on the Titan.
Ricky
so
Bobby
fast.
syndrome, just gotta go fast.
Hey, I know anytime I play my Titan on stream anymore, anytime I have a moment of decent movement, they're like, TV looking like a ninja over here. You made a name for yourself.
All right. Well, like I said, I want to get together and discuss the special ammo economy changes. As you guys all, there are multiple game modes in the game, so we're not just going to be talking about trials. It's like, it doesn't work in trials. That doesn't make for a good discussion. So I'd first like to start with how the special ammo change actually affects PvP play. Either of you guys want to kind of start off, tell me your impressions about it?
Well, I guess to start, we can separate it into groups. You have, 6s, 3s, and separate from 3s, you have trials, right? Completely different environments for everything. For 6s, we've seen a whole lot of sidearm usage now, and I think that's due to the fact that you kind of need to be lethal off spawn. And since you spawn with no shotgun ammo or no snipe ammo, you have to dedicate time to finding said ammo. And right now, that's not necessarily a huge deal in 6s. You can kind of get in a good rhythm of randomly stumbling across green ammo. But in other game modes like 3s, a little bit slower pace, but with competent teams, you're going to find yourself struggling. So, just an easy 2 cents there. I don't know, what about you, True?
Yeah, similar opinions. I think in the 6s playlist, it's the most forgiving for this latest change. You can get away with heavily using your primary weapon, which is a great thing. But at the same time, I think that your special economy, it comes up pretty frequently. It's not so difficult to get your hands on it. It does affect different weapons, I think, more than others. But for the most part, I think it plays decently well in the 6s playlist. But I think that the fewer people you get on the map, the less the economy works, the changes work. I think that we find, especially when we get into an elimination playlist, specifically trials, I think that we find that we wanted a primary meta, but it's a forced one, and that becomes apparent when you get into a playlist like trials, where you are immediately punished from the get-go if you're not using a weapon that bypasses those changes. Because when you just have a hand cannon equipped at the beginning of a round, you're at a pretty significant disadvantage when you're going against people who can hardscope lanes already, who can get out into the mid-map and then hardscope the avenues into that, or even waiting into spawn and hardscoping those lanes. So before you ever have special, you're getting punished for it. So I think that the fewer people you get on the map, the less these changes work.
Yeah, I think we all kind of echo the same things here for the most part. Specifically for me, the special ammo change is, in a 6v6 playlist, it's most noticeable in Supremacy. When you actually get a good game, regarding no lag or anything like that, like an Iron Banner, man, Supremacy plays so well with these changes. It really does. You actually have very, very interesting small team fights all over the map where you have a couple people running together, helping to secure kills using primaries. It really feels like this particular change where, losing heavy or losing special, when you die, it makes Supremacy play like Supremacy was meant to be played. However, once you, even within other 6v6 playlists, I feel like the change just doesn't, it's too constricting on people right now. Like, for example, control. Say you want to go attack or defend a point and you just died. Well, the objective of the game is holding an area, and sometimes you just completely going into a point without that special weapon sometimes, and going up against an unknown of if other people have their special ammo, especially if they just killed you on that point, it's a kind of a lose-lose scenario there. And then, of course, moving into the other smaller playlists, I do agree with what you guys are saying, too. Man, we need some discourse in here. We all agree with each other.
Well, there's some things too, and like you said, you may or may not like it in certain types of I don't know what you're going to call them, quantity of players, right? You said 6 is a little more forgiving. Some could say in competitive that it was a bit of a nice change, right? We've gone from someone running around with a shotgun and being very, very proficient with it, and it didn't even matter how good you were with your primary because there was so much inconsistency in the initial shot accuracy on top of bloom. And that caused some issues. And that's not even introducing something like latency as well. That makes it even worse. So the competitive side of the game kind of evolved in a mannerism that kind of supported more team shotting, which is nice. I got to say, when I first started playing this patch and I played competitive stuff, I loved it. It was nice. I didn't run into Stormcaller melee punch from like 20 feet. Didn't get, team shotgunned, or didn't get pushed on spawn too hard with shotguns, which was nice. But after a little bit of time invested, I kind of missed the ability to make massive plays, and you don't really have that availability because you don't have shotgun ammo all the time. If you almost made a good play and you died, you now no longer have shotgun, and you must play as a team with primaries until you find more green ammo and then try to make a play. Having shotgun be super abundant before the patch, not being punished on death, kind of allowed you to do some pretty crazy things. You had the 1-on-4 scenario, the 1-on-3 scenario, the montage moments we've all come to love within Destiny. And right now, that's not really possible. Even if you run something like a sidearm. Primaries, 3-tap, ISO, or something like that, very punishing if you miss some sidearm rounds, or if you have more than one target. Sidearms are great at single target damage within 10 to 15 feet. Beyond that, ISO, palindrome, weapons of the sort are going to start ruling the world. And that lack of montage capability can kind of take away from the overall experience. It's kind of what I fell in love with.
And I think that there's something to be said for that. I think that, a lot of times people say that what they want is balance. But balance is a good thing in and of itself. But at the same time, you do have to have that sort of play potential factor. And what I mean by that is the potential to make these plays. And there have been days where I've had a terrible day in the Crucible, absolutely terrible day in the Crucible. But there's that one play, that breaker or that team wipe that I made, and it happened because I had a sniper with ammo in it, and I got a primary kill, switched to the second guy, got a nice clutch headshot, and then maybe a jumper on the third. But your play potential, when that potential is high, you sort of feel encouraged to play more. And even on the bad days, they can feel good when you walk away with just that one epic clip. But when you take away when that play potential sort of decreases, you end up with what I see as a much more watered down experience. And while you may actually attain a little bit more balance in some regard, or maybe even just in some playlists, balance doesn't always mean a good experience. So there has to be a balance of both of those things. You need weapon balance, absolutely, but at the same time, you need to have high play potential so that players can walk away from their experience feeling rewarded.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that too. It seems like if you want to be able to have those moments more reliably, we start seeing a lot of people using like No Land Beyond sidearm, changing up their loadouts to maybe hand cannon and icebreaker, or something along those lines to kind of mimic what you used to be able to do pre-patch, which is use your special, use a sniper, use the weapon for the specific given engagement, when you actually need it. My question to you guys, how do you feel like the changes have what has it done to the overall pace of each game? Because it used to be, it was very, very much focused on kills. Absolutely very much focused on kills or moving around to the objective, whatever that happened to be in each given game. And now, it's another thing to consider now when you spawn. Do I need special? How do you guys feel that it's playing out?
Well, I gotta say, it's definitely slowed the game down quite a bit. Primary is becoming more prominent and consistent, sped it up, but at the same time, the lack of green ammo capacity to support very aggressive plays definitely changes the pace. Now you have to take time, like you said, think about your green ammo capacity. When's the next one spawning? Am I near one now? Who's near those? Am I going to have to fight for this? Very big questions that all need to be answered and that take time for the average player to respond. You don't just spawn and have this immediate plan that plays out like some Mission Impossible stunt. It just doesn't work like that. So I just got to say that overall slow and pace has brought some refreshing aspects of the game, but also brings its frustrations. And I don't know. It's an interesting patch, to say the least. Some things are good, some things are bad.
Mm-hmm. For sure. I think pace is an interesting topic because I think that there's honestly so many factors to play into the overall pace of the game. And not only that, but different playlists have different paces just because of their inherent attributes. So, for example, I think personally sixes, in terms of the pace, I honestly can't tell much of a difference. If I'm being honest, I feel like back when it was the previous meta, you had Clever Dragons and Shotguns that were sort of on top. I don't think the pace has really changed much for me, at least in my limited experience. But then you go into a playlist like Trials of Osiris, and I think that the pace has been pulled back to a screeching halt. Just comparing apples to apples, I know that as a streamer, you time these things out, and so. In previous metas, I've been able to complete a Trials passage in 45 minutes. So that kind of affected how I blocked, what kind of time blocks I carved out of my schedule for my trial streams. I could kind of bank on being done with a card in 45 minutes. And I kid you not, in the current state of the game, there are some times where a single passage completed 9-0 Lighthouse Run can sometimes take up to an hour and a half. That's double, the time that I sort of banked on earlier on. So I think that shows very, very clearly. I know I can't speak for everyone else, but my experience week after week after week is consistently slower in the elimination playlist. But then again, like I said, sixes feels largely unchanged to me. If there is a pace change, it seems minimal, maybe even negligible.
Okay. Kind of a counter to your 6v6 thing. I feel like gameplay has significantly slowed down there. At least during the second week of the patch being out. During the first week, everyone was experimenting, and the games were a little bit slower. But then the second week was very much noticeably slower for me, where a lot of games would go to time, and this was across all playlists, not just some of the longer ones, like even having clashes go to time, supremacy going to time. And to me, that, I don't know, I feel like people want to play with specials, so they're gonna hold back, wait for that special ammo to spawn. That could be one of the possibilities in it as well. Another thing is people are able to respond to primaries more easily because primaries are built around team fights. So if you have a lot of 1v1 fights going on, you're going to have a lot of people capable of living too. They're going to be able to get away from a fight that's going on, and no points are had when no one dies from that either. I will say that the elimination playlist, it's been very interesting. Even though that the rounds have been shortened, I've had a lot of passages where a lot of games are going to time. And we've had 3 separate maps now, as far as the recording of this little video here. 3 separate maps where every single week the maps they're going to time.
Yeah, and the biggest irony, like you said, is exactly the time limit for trials per round has been reduced. Theoretically, from just thinking from that one metric, the game should be faster, correct? Right? The overall amount of time that you could possibly play per round is now lower. But the average time period in which a normal team plays within that round is lengthened because now you're waiting for green. If you push up, they have a super, you just got picked, stuff like that. You almost have no response to a super nowadays, especially in trials. Even if you use something like No Land Beyond Start, looking for that initial pick, trying to complement it with maybe some sidearm play, you have no competent mannerism to deny someone with damage resistance. Like, for instance, Blade. I think we've all come to accept the fact that Blade is not what it once was, and I don't think it'll ever return to that. Right now, it is pretty much a slot machine with a butter knife. It occasionally will work. Sure, with enough time, you could make a butter knife do a lot of damage. But within Destiny and some of its constraints and some of the inconsistencies that also lie within those constraints, Blade is we'll put it at a solid 2 out of 10. And it's kind of funny because that used to be one of the most prominently used classes in the game. Way back to the origination, or not even a word, the original start of the competitive Destiny. The really, really base layers of the competitive side, purely Blade Dancer. Purely Blade.
Absolutely.
And nowadays we have Blade short stopping. You have the consistent nerfs to it, which kind of don't make much sense to me because it wasn't really being used. The addition of a recovery nerf on Blink, which eventually was taken back, on top of a punishment for using super energy to maneuver throughout the map. You had a class that could jump, swing, and then gain great momentum from it, right? And just chain that together. That's been removed pretty much, or increased in terms of super usage. And then you have the piece of resistance. You have the fact that the grenade itself did originally less damage than another flux grenade. And I'm talking about, not flux, I'm sorry, than a fusion grenade. And now has been normalized to a value that will consistently one-hit kill, which is nice. Well done on that one. I don't want this to all be picking apart the dev team in terms of their class balance, but there's consistent changes that, in my opinion, just aren't needed, or they're going the wrong way. And in one in particular is like they tried to reduce the inconsistency of shotgun, right? They made it so that in-air accuracy was lessened and took away precision damage. Precision damage are creating some sort of degree of consistency because now you no longer snipe someone for hitting 4 pellets on a headshot. But at the same exact time, they took that away by reducing in-air accuracy.
Mm-hmm.
So on one hand, they're like, hey, let's make shotguns consistent by making so they can't snipe you with a headshot. And then on the other, they're like, let's remove in-air accuracy. And I'm like, half my Destiny gameplay's in the air. Why?
Yeah.
Why are you trying to be boots on the ground? Are you trying to make COD 4 be your new game?
The gameplay is very, very much movement oriented. Every single class uses their jump abilities to gain some sort of movement advantage, and some maps cater to some other classes more than others. But yeah, we all use those movement abilities. I think this is a good time to transition into the section where we talk about the goals of the patch. In the weekly update, I believe previous to them showing this, they listed out 5 goals that they wanted this patch to obtain. And I don't want this to be like, completely shitting on them or picking apart little tiny promises and words, but I think it's a good exercise just to see if the goals that were presented were, the changes actually kind of reflect that. So the first goal was to promote alternatives and counters to shotguns. And let's, just for the sake of this exercise, let's not look at the special ammo change. Can we just look at like the changes that were done to weapons, and then
absolutely
with the caveat that the special ammo change was also a thing?
Yeah, let me kick this up. Okay, so if we're looking at the goals, and without being overly nitpicky, let's just take that word promote and think about what that means. So promote alternatives. Let me just say that my initial reaction to that wording means, so we're not getting a shot. This was my reaction to it. So that means we're not getting a shotgun nerf. We're promoting the things that could potentially stand up against it. So I was anticipating a more bringing other things up, instead of bringing the one guy down. So I didn't anticipate a shotgun nerf. I anticipated a more thoughtful and extensive AR buff, a more thoughtful and extensive tuning to specific subclasses. Sorry, I lost the word for a moment. I really wanted some more thoughtful buffs instead of the bringing down of the shotguns in terms of the aerial accuracy and the precision damage being removed. I didn't think we were going to get a nerf to that. So I didn't want Titan skating shotgunning to go away, because in my opinion that's really dynamic, and quite frankly, Destiny has so much character because people were able to couple things together, like Titan movement and shotgunning. I'm not saying that just exclusively, but that is just an example of the sort of ingenuity of the community that plays Destiny. They're able to couple things together to make these really interesting playstyles that don't exist in other games. But then you start to pick on those things by bringing shotguns down, and that playstyle is now. And Ninja, you could probably back this up more than I can because you sort of main a Titan skating shotgun, right?
Yeah.
But that playstyle has dramatically been changed, and maybe not so much in a good way. It's taking character away from the things that separate Destiny from other games. So when you say promote alternatives, I think other things are going to get buffed. I don't think that shotguns are going to get nerfed. So my initial reaction to goal number 1 is that was maybe achieved, but not in the way I wanted it to be achieved.
Mm-hmm. And I can agree with that. I would say, out of terms of success for that initial goal, they may have hit it. Maybe not flat on the head, but they have hit it to a certain degree. Inconsistencies in primary usage and hand cannons in particular seems to have gone away for the most part. There are still instances of like, wow, that didn't hit, but not nearly as many as there were last patch. I think everyone as a whole can agree that hand cannons are now in a much greater place in terms of consistency than they were in the past patch. When it comes to AR effectiveness or pulse effectiveness, Clever Dragon being brought down a notch was kind of nice. I mean, let's be honest, I got a little sick of getting high cal round 3 bursted from
a little bit
30, 40 feet, maybe even up to 100, maybe. But after that, it seems like pulses return back to a Hawksaw type if you want to use them. There are a few that will use the Clever Dragon, whether they're being hipsters or maybe they just like it. I don't know. It still a competent weapon with its ones. Maybe not in its 1v2s or 1v3s, but it's not bad. Assault rifles, I just don't see them coming back in terms of proficiency like they were once in year 1. I mean, who all remembers the Shingen E meta? Remember that? Ooh.
Oh, God, yeah. Ooh. The auto rifle meta was just devastating.
Oh,
it was kind of good.
It was crazy because, you know what, auto rifles require damage over time. And with damage over time, you require aim over time. And there's a bit of a skill gap with that because you have the potential chance to outshoot your opponents. The ability to produce, 20 rounds worth of damage and being required to hit 15 of those to do 1 kill, you had a chance to outplay some people who just didn't have the thumb skill to keep up with you, which was kind of cool. But ARs just won't come back unless they have time to kills that rival hand cannons. And that's scary on an auto rifle. That's very scary. The only other thing I could see is potentially keeping that in line with a very finite damage fall off. If you're in AR's effective range, it potentially has time to kill the hand cannon, but as soon as you go beyond it, you start having the ability to pretty much just annoy the enemy and not so much kill them. But paired together could be good. So between pulse, ARs, hand cannons, I mean, let's be honest, I don't think we're all going to step away from hand cannons anytime soon, right?
I don't feel like there's much of a competitive reason not to use a hand cannon. I mean, you have the added benefit of a very short time to kill when properly used, three shots to effectively kill someone, and you can go in and out of cover. And if you go in and out of cover using an auto rifle, you're just making your time to kill go sky high. It takes way too long. Pulse rifles, I feel, are in a pretty comfortable boat.
I agree
as
with
well
that.
Now. You have that semi-auto capability, much longer ranges. Yes, I feel like it's much more into a Hawksaw type meta for pulse rifles after trying out a plethora of them. Pre the Unshot, the slowest ones are in an okay place. I feel like they could speed up the rate of fire just a little bit more. But yeah, when I heard that thing of promote alternatives and counters to shotguns, like you were saying, TV, I thought we were going to see more buffs to, say, other specials too. One thing that I thought like sidearms could really use would be hair trigger just on all sidearms to make that rapid fire a little bit easier, because I know all of you use sidearms, correct?
To a certain extent, yes.
The highest rate of fire sidearms are very difficult to use because it's very difficult to actually fire the trigger at the proper rate of fire, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I felt like hair trigger would be an interesting change they could have done to sidearms to, promote an alternative to shotguns.
I agree with that, but the only problem with that, I think, and this isn't trying to crap on your idea or anything of the sort, not at all. If they make hair trigger a thing on every sidearm archetype, there would be very minimal things, I think, promoting a choice of sidearm usage. Say they do hair trigger across the board on everything, right? If you could fire a Havoc Pigeon at the same speed as that Iron Banner sidearm, it would be the obvious choice would be to use the Havoc Pigeon because it does more damage, correct? But a balance like that would be stability, maybe? Stability being a drawback? Mm-hmm. So I don't know.
The rate of fire is actually very easy to properly sample on sidearms, Havoc Pigeon, Wormwood, and then I'm going to say the raid one, the Zeal Vector. It's fairly simple to hit it properly sampled where you're not over or under sampling rounds due to just how Destiny samples your trigger rounds, but for like the absolute fastest rate of fire ones, it's virtually impossible to hit. So you can't make it fire faster.
Correct.
But you can make it more reliable, almost like you're queuing up your shots. Fusion rifles, I thought we would see something with fusion rifles, as a proper alternative to shotguns, because if you guys recall in year one, someone tried to map you with a shotgun, you could probably map them with a fusion rifle from way further out too.
Yeah, I agree with that. I just I'm having PTSD for what is the weapon? Hold on, the word's escaping me. It's probably on purpose. My brain probably stacked all sorts of information over
Wizard 77.
Not
Plug
necessarily
one.
the Wizard. It's full automatic fusion rifle.
Vex.
Infinity. Pocket Infinity.
Yes, Pocket
Oh,
Infinity.
Oh my
man,
there was a time when the thing was completely broken, for sure.
That sound, I think, what did it have in a magazine, like 8 rounds or something like that?
In its most original form, yeah, it had 8 rounds.
Oh man, the sounds that I hear deep in the darkness at night while waking up from a terrible nightmare, the Pocket Infinity just kind of echoing throughout the house. Yeah, that's something.
But let's talk about this for a second. Let's definitely talk about this for a second, because as we're still kind of discussing goal number 1, and I think, in my opinion, and there are people who will disagree with me, some of them respectfully, but most of them not. But I loved back when you were being rushed by a shotgunner and you actually had the capacity, if you had enough player skill, you could quick draw swap to a sniper rifle and quick scope to the dome in close range, and you could pull that shot off, and it was one of the most rewarding things in the world. Now, that's not something that happened all the time, but when it happened, it felt great, because this was before the sniper weapon handling speed, zoom value nerf, some of the AA nerfs on snipers. They tried to make snipers, per what they told us, they wanted them to be a precision weapon that you hung back, you played patiently, and you took the shots that were given to you at a long range. And so they made some pretty heavy nerfs to snipers to promote that style of play. In my opinion, Destiny, with its movement and map design, it just doesn't work. Because we're not on Bastion and First Light ever. Like, ever. So,
wait, you mean I can't use my 40 times hunter scope from Battlefield?
Right. It doesn't work here. So I understand the goal, because in real life snipers like that. But this isn't real life. We're space people shooting space weapons at aliens and stuff. Yeah. I would have liked to see in this recent patch, when you say promote alternatives, I would have liked to see, not necessarily I'm fine with the flinch to a certain degree. I think there's something that I think that the flinch nerf could have been a little bit more thoughtful, but I think the flinch is a good thing overall on sniper rifles. But I would have liked to see the zoom value and handling speed nerfs undone to promote, using those a little bit more so that they can compete in the closer range engagements, which are the overwhelming majority of our engagements in Destiny.
And that's it right there. I think this is a prime example of I don't know what you want to call it, 2 exactly different mindsets. You have the devs and what they want, and you have the players. And I wouldn't want to say we are the majority or the voice of the community, not at all. But I would say that what we desire and what they desire are completely 2 different things. And just because we desire something doesn't mean they have to change it. I respect the fact that it's their game. They can make it any way they want. I agree with that. But at the same time, we might want something like increased handling speed on sniper rifles and reduction in flinch and the original zoom be brought back. But on their end, they want you to have that hung back sniper. And then in my opinion, that promotes a rather frustrating experience. You now just got picked by somebody who was sitting still using just the right thumbstick and an ADS and a right trigger. And like you said earlier, map design too. You have maps like Firebase. Trying to snipe on Firebase after patch for flinch, for handling speed, for zoom distance, it is almost impossible.
Yeah, it's a nightmare.
It is a pain. Before, you could run a sniper on Firebase and potentially get kills, whether they were body shot, weapon swaps to primary and kills, or just headshot quick scopes or double bodies, whatever. It was still possible. And this is a design intent on their end that kind of doesn't match the kind of intent that we would hope for, which sucks, but it's the way the game is. I can respect the decision, but I would have liked something to promote a skill gap, and handling speed on snipers, or even on weapons as a whole, being improvised or improved to kind of bounds that we didn't expect. it might do that, but I don't feel as if they're trying to promote a skill gap. I kind of feel like they're just trying to lessen the highs and the lows of players so that they have some linear experience. And that's not what I fell in love with Destiny. I fell in love with the roller coaster of excitement, the ability to make a massive play 1 minute and then to get utterly annihilated the next.
Right.
And it's just not there anymore.
I can definitely agree with that. I think we can move on to the second point here. Align potency of primary weapons with surgical changes. So just talking about primaries this time, they're kind of wanting to, make all primaries better, I guess. And in this regard, I think overall, I feel like that all the changes that we saw to primaries were pretty good. The problem primaries, the Clever Dragon type pulses were brought down just a little bit. It really wasn't that huge of a change. If you want to use the Waltz, you can still be very potent with it. If you want to use Clever Dragon, you're still going to kill people just fine. But it's no longer that, that outlier, that nail that was sticking up in terms of potency. Hand cannons, I think we can all agree, it's really nice to have your shots be way more consistent.
You don't have to have rifle barrel to hit things anymore.
Correct.
Which is really nice. Requiring nice. One range stat for weapons competence is frustrating, to say the least.
Well, rifle barrel, in my opinion, is still like the absolute end-all be-all perk that you want. Correct. Because you do want your damage to carry out as far as possible. So like rangefinder and rifle together are almost even more so now, but for a completely different reason.
But at least you can still hit things if you don't have it.
Exactly. That's the big old takeaway point. I think one of the biggest words we're going to say the most throughout this talk is consistency. That right there in bold, magnified, the 1000 font up on the board at the devs studio, that should be the goal. Consistency. You should never have a feeling of robbed or I wasn't awarded something for the skill that I just put into my action, right?
We've had enough of those at this point.
Exactly. I'm tired of RNG. Loot's fine, fantastic, but where are my bullets going? Oh, please no. Mm-hmm. So I gotta agree with you then. I think the surgical improvements are definitely present. Initial shot accuracy, well done. Nice job. Whoever was in the lead of that, I would agree with it. Well done. You can use brace frame and potentially fight someone with rifled barrel. Within your effective
close
range
maps.
Yes,
close range maps. I saw you and Ramblin talking about it. How like brace frame on a hand cannon is really damn good on a close range map.
It felt really good on a map like Anomaly and maybe some parts of Asylum. Firebase probably being one that'll work too. Yes, and some bit of Cauldron. So you're always fighting this ability to be within 3-tap range, right? But you also have this added disadvantage of reduction in aim assist at range, right? Range stat being tied to aim assist, from my knowledge, makes brace frame a little bit more right thumbstick intensive. If you are not on with your aim, brace frame is going to feel like an alien life form, and you'll go back. But I like the ability to use more perks. You could use Hammerforge now, right? You could use small bore. You could use brace frame. I haven't tested small bore out yet, but it's been looking pretty enticing, so I might have to do that.
And I have to agree with you guys. I think with hand cannons, I love the changes. I absolutely love the changes. One of my favorite guns to use right now is the Ace of Spades. I'm in love with that gun. It feels super consistent and very highly rewarding. And I've always used it, even in the previous metas when rifled barrel was the thing and you didn't have it on the Ace. I mean, I still used the thing and really liked it. But now it feels even more consistent and pretty crispy. I love the thing. Paul says, I agree with everything you guys have said. Scouts and ARs, let me just say, I still think that there are some more surgical changes that we can do. We saw some changes to ARs. We really didn't see any with Scouts other than the inner accuracy buff. So Scouts, I think, have been on the bottom for a long time. They could have used a little bit of attention, in my opinion, to make them a little bit more of an option to use. And with ARs, I would have liked to see some different changes across the different archetypes, maybe a little more surgical than what we got, because I think that as a few weeks in, on day one I saw a lot of ARs, but a few weeks in I'm not seeing very many at all. So I think
day one I was using a lot of like Kvasov, the high rate of fire ones, and finding great success, but by the second week the meta has kind of settled a little bit, and it was very difficult to use that AR.
And I'm not saying that I want them to be on top, but I want them to be consistently at least average. I want them to be average at least consistently. And I still feel like scouts and ARs are below average. And I think that's reflected even in the conversations that we've had so far. We've talked a lot about hand cannons, and we've talked a little bit about the pulses, but we haven't even mentioned barely, save for a few moments, ARs, and we haven't even at all talked about scout rifles. It's because they're so forgettable and, so lackluster right now that they don't warrant conversation. I think that in and of itself is indicative that maybe we need a little bit more love and attention on those. Because there was a time when I mained those two. There was a time when I would never touch a hand cannon when Destiny first came out. I loved scout rifles and ARs, I really did. But that's changed.
I think that's partially due to the fact that it's map design, though, right? Scout rifle is supposed to be medium to long range, like main effectiveness, right? And I get that's a scout rifle. It's meant to be something where you could kind of like post up somewhere and do great amounts of damage and then kind of move on to another location. Maybe an intrinsic increase in agility by using a scout rifle, offering greater strafe speeds or faster handling, something, I don't know, to promote it to being used on a map like, mid-range, I don't know, what's a good mid-range map? Pantheon, maybe? It's got some long-range sight lines, but it's majority mid-range. But auto rifles, I think the design intent for that was the ability to have ease of use. And with ease of use, I don't think they can promote a whole lot of competent time to kills because they're trying to make this weapon easy to handle. But if they make it too easy to handle and very good in terms of DPS, you're going to have a lot of good players switching to that and then punishing those who aren't, as good. So when it comes to design intent, I think autos are ease of use, pulse rifle, a blend between ease of use and a higher skill gap. Hand cannons, I think, requiring the most finesse to use them, right? You have all your damage tied to one shot and a finite effective range. And it's kind of hard to bring everything onto that. I think hand cannons are the end result due to the part of the fact having some mid-air accuracy being awarded, right? This really fast movement speed we've all fallen in love with. Having the potential to at least be competent while in the air to a certain extent. It's not perfect, we know that. But being able to have a weapon that can at least do damage in the air consistently or close to it is nice. And you're not going to have that in scouts. You're not going to have it in ARs. You're not going to have it in pulses. And with so much verticality, that's just the way it's going to be.
Yeah, we haven't really talked about that in-air change, but that was something that happened to all primaries except hand cannons. They had their in-air accuracy modified a little bit. And it's noticeable. It actually is very much noticeable on particularly pulses and scout rifles. I'm able to, if I hit someone just a little bit, they push in, I can jump up and, evade a little bit and still reliably hit some shots, whether it be hip firing or aiming down sights on them while in the air. So that is one thing to consider, that they did make them a little more potent in areas that they weren't previously.
I agree with that.
More consistent in areas that they previously weren't.
And branching off a little bit of what Ninja was talking about with ARs, with the ease of use being the primary goal, I will say that let me just use this as an example. People might discount my opinion because they might see me as being a more skilled player, so my opinion on an ease of use weapon may be a little skewed. But let me just say this. My wife has... she has a PS4. We game together a lot. It's one of the ways that we interact with each other. But we can't play Destiny together because she gravitates towards the ease of use weapons, and she had tried. We have a number of, I might even consider God-rolled ARs on her account that I played on her account for a little while doing PvE to kind of get some stuff for her. So she picks it up and we try and play PvP together, and she's using an AR. And even though it is easy to use, relatively speaking, and then let me just say, even when I wasn't playing with her and it was just her own matchmaking catered to her, she was consistently going things like 2 and 15, 3 and 15. Now, my wife is not bad at video games at all. She's well seasoned in video games. But using an AR, she just could not compete. She could not keep up, regardless of the fact that it was easy to use. I think that in and of itself is pretty indicative that they're just not potent enough. And so I kind of stand by that. I don't think that the AR changes are quite there. But talking about goal number 2, I think overall they achieved it. I like a lot of the primary changes. But if I'm getting nitpicky, I don't like where ARs are yet. I would love to have a reason to use my hard light, but I don't have one. Other than when I'm doing challenge personal challenge runs with my friends. It's the only time I ever use it.
Yeah, I can agree with that. And even if they brought up the potency for it, I still think it would be a decent change. And like you said, it would open up an availability for someone who likes to man an AR, who likes that ease of use to at least be competent against others, right? And, I wouldn't be against that. I got to say it. Some variability in PvP would kind of be cool. We've had a bit of an introduction to this patch for 2 weeks now, and we have seen some changes. Bringing AR proficiency up a notch, maybe not a bad call. Maybe not. Dying by something more than just a Iasluna, Palindrome, Occasional Clever Dragon, Hawksaw, PDX-45, stuff like that would be kind of nice.
All right, so we can move on to point 3, I think, after a short break there from TV. File down a couple of issues from each class. Now, off the top of you guys' heads, what issues did you think were going to be adjusted, and then did those issues get kind of touched at all?
Ooh. So I got a big one here, because I'm going to go first, because I don't know of one off the top of my head other than this one, but Stormcaller, the punch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I kind of felt like I was being hit with a semi-truck from, I don't know, pole vaulting distance. We'll put it that way. What's the average pole vault jump nowadays? 20, 25 feet, something crazy?
Yeah, sure, we'll
go with that. We're definitely Olympic athletes over here, and we know all the stats. But the ability to not be tickled by a shotgun and punched by a Stormcaller with arguably the greatest aim assistance in the game is a welcome change. So well done on that one.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that was such a prominent thing. And a moment of transparency, if I may. In the previous meta, I kind of got back into the sweat community and doing sweats with some top tier players. Mm-hmm. And I knew that in that meta, shotguns were dominant. And I knew that personally, gauging my skill, I think I'm good with a shotgun, but I'm not great with a shotgun. And I can't shotgun against other phenomenal shotgunners. So I intentionally went back into sweats as a Stormcaller main because I knew that what I lacked in shotgun skill, I could make up for
Guys, I
with
gotta
my
go.
melee range.
I gotta go. You just hit me with a nuclear bomb.
So when I resurfaced in the sweat scene, I was a Stormcaller main. Now that changed over time, but as a bit of transparency there, yes, it was a crutch, and yes, I used it sometimes.
I'm going to go get some mouthwash real quick.
Yeah, the Stormcaller melee is the very big obvious one that I think people were kind of clamoring for. Oh, everyone except Stormcallers. Some Stormcallers.
Crutch.
The other big change that I think people were wanting to see addressed in some way was Jug Shield. So they disabled it after being in the air for a short time, and it can't be activated while in midair. So if you want to activate it, you have to be running on ground, and you can't skate with it.
Correct.
It's
good change.
Yeah,
in my opinion,
it's a very good change. I personally still think that Jug Shield, like, you could have it in its previous form where it worked in air and everything, as long as damage went through it in some fashion.
Yeah, bleed damage. The fact that they can eat like an LDR to the face and do nothing, or even a golden gun round, right? If I'm not mistaken.
I put out a video about it a while back. It's literally anything.
Gross.
Except like a rocket.
Yeah, AoE splash damage, probably getting past that little, I don't know what you want to call it, force field, right? So, you know what's funny too is that last patch beforehand, they accidentally buffed it, I think. They reduced the time that it was required to gain it. And I was like, why? Why? I didn't want to get shotguns or rushed anymore, please.
That was also after nerfing shoulder charge,
which they didn't talk about right away either, and we called them out on it. It's funny, too, the first game I ever played after that was Rusted Lands, and I noticed a weird change. I went to go shoulder charge somebody with the adequate amount of time, and I punched and did nothing, and I was like, am I crazy? And then about a couple hours later, people were talking about it, and I was like, okay, I'm not crazy. This is nice. I like this.
Yeah. So those were, I think those were the two big changes that we definitely thought we would see. Was there anything else that you guys thought might get adjusted?
Off the top of my head, I don't know if anything that I expected to be changed, but there's definitely some things I wish they would have changed. We can talk about that later.
All right.
Yeah, I think those are the major two.
Okay, so one of the other things that they did, they reduced the health of Guardians with armor values above 10. So I think you can get to that 10 armor and you still benefit from it, but going over that, you don't really get many benefits from it as you previously did. And that allows you to survive like the 3-tap from the hand cannon, which is, I'm seeing a lot of Titans and Warlocks starting to run 10 armor now due to how prevalent hand cannons are in the Crucible.
You save yourself.
Don't know about you guys.
You save yourself from some engagements. There's my tongue working. And because the damage fall off is a bit more abrupt. You do find that a person will survive some instances where they 3-tap you because you couldn't 3-tap them. But standardizing health values is a big one. Well done. I like that.
Just as a quick side question. Never mind. This could easily prompt like another 30-minute long debate. Armor recovery and agility. How needed are these? Like in terms of actually speccing out your character. The reason I ask this is in the process they allow us to get to 10 armor and have these great benefits. But I believe in the Crucible, armor and recovery are like these stats to get, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. I'm not crazy then.
No.
And then yet they have it so certain classes can't get, that max armor and max recovery. They in the process of, creating a unique game, they also kind of handicap some classes in some way. Maybe this is just me being a hunter speaking out about all the suffering that we must have because we can't get both max armor and max agility like everyone else. And then the agility,
and not even that fast. If you run max agility on a hunter, it's like, what are my bones? Oh, I ran into combat and died faster. Nice.
Yeah, it doesn't increase sprint speed. The only thing that agility increases is base movement speed, and it'll basically increase it by up to about 3%.
And I agree with that. The one thing I also noticed on other classes for agility increases the potential vertical velocity.
Yep, potential vertical velocity, and then you get, if you go above 5 agility, you get one more slide before you incur the slide penalty.
Changing my whole build right now.
Oh, there you go, baby. Next level.
Yeah. Overall, I would just wish that those, like agility specifically, played more of a factor. I wish you had to think about that a little bit more than you currently do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I agree with that. And without stepping into another 35, 40-minute conversation about it, the ability to lock off certain elements of recovery armor stat for subclasses creates a feeling of unique ability between your subclass, between not just your killing abilities, but also your backup stats. I get it, but I'm a Halo guy. I like everyone being on the same field, same movement speed, same health. That's me, but I understand that's not Destiny.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. I could, I'd like to see more support, so maybe every single person could at least have every single possible same spec as everyone else, if that was a possibility, because certain activities, inherently require other stats. In PvE, you definitely want higher. Recovery, armor isn't that important in PvE. Maybe you do want that higher agility to, jump around a little bit more because enemies aren't going to hit you. But in PvP, man, armor recovery, that's the thing. And when you go into engagements, you're expecting people to react in certain ways, and not like, I shoot at you, you move. I'm saying I damage you, and I'm expecting you to take this much damage. And then I expect it to take this long to recover health type thing. So if that was like, I don't know, it would take away from the customizability of the game, but I feel like PvP as a whole could greatly benefit from just a normalization of armor recovery and agility.
Exactly.
Just like how our light levels and everything are normalized anyway.
It promotes consistency, in my opinion, if you offer the same abilities across the board in terms of armor recovery, agility. Some would argue that their class doesn't feel unique anymore. I would say that your class is still plenty unique. You have a super that doesn't act like anyone else's. You have grenades that don't necessarily act like anyone else's. You have the ability to do some very crazy things, and you shouldn't be, so frustrated about a potential chance of offering max recovery to everyone. I just think that's silly.
Moving on, though, from the armor discussion, there was also flux grenades were normal, or sticky grenades were normalized.
Well, yeah.
Across all classes, which awesome.
My stamp of
as you said earlier, Ninja, consistency in big bold letters. The most confusing change for me was the one done to Blink, though.
Oh God, yes. Ooh, so how long you guys been playing Destiny now? How many hours you think?
I believe I am right at 2,800 hours.
So I'm thinking I'm probably around 4,000.
Okay.
And I don't know about you. What about you, TrueVanguard?
God, brag about it.
Definitely. Sorry, I had to grow my time played PvP-ness real quick. Sorry about that.
I think the last I checked was really like 2,400.
Okay, so regardless, we have an extreme amount of time in the game. More than we probably would care to admit to the public, correct? We're all out. We all have to change our names now. But I gotta say, Blink has not been a concern for over a year and a half, I think. And yet it's continually pushed into the ground. And I'm trying to fathom what there has to be a reason for it, right? It's just not like they wake up in the morning and they're like, hey guys, let's knock Blink down again just because we can.
I can't find the exact tweet because it was from like 2 or 3 weeks ago, but Josh Hamrick was talking about it on Twitter with someone, which I fucking love how transparent he has been on Twitter, Bungie, talking about all the changes before they happen.
Yeah, I'll give him that
after
for
they
sure.
happen. I fucking love that.
And that's the way it needs to be honest. A conversation about the game rather than a here, this is what we're doing, be happy with it.
Yeah. The reasoning that he gave was that at some of the lower skill brackets, Blink is still a problem. People are finding it difficult to combat. Not necessarily use, but difficult to combat it.
Okay, I can agree with that. It might be biased because we're on the upper echelon in terms of skill. I would argue that. I don't like sounding conceited, and if it comes across like that, it's not the intended purpose. But I could see the difficult tracking that it kind of imposes on players. They've adjusted that by offering a visual cue on where an opponent should go, correct, or a trail to lead people on where to look.
Yeah, there's kind of like a path. It shows
correct.
It shows it in a pathway.
And I think with enough time, you should be able to learn how it behaves. Should be in the keyword. We're all very different. Some of us are just good at things like this. Some are not, and you shouldn't be punished for not being as good. But at the same time, Blink is a very unique ability.
It's a high skill ability.
Correct. The skill gap, I would argue, with Blink is probably larger than any other movement ability in the game.
I think, like, look at Real Crafty. If you ever watch him stream, and he's still using Blink even after the nerf, and that man is able to take that Blink ability to just levels that I never thought were possible. He does amazing things with it, and I don't know. I feel like that type of time investment from a player to really get good with ability and a very high skill ability, having that drastic of a change to it just doesn't feel warranted, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'll wait. I'm sorry, were you done?
Yeah. No, you go ahead.
Yeah. So a couple of things from me. First and foremost, when they started out this reveal stream, when they talked about the changes they were going to make, the first things that we saw were graphs and numbers and statistics, and I was really excited. Because, that's absolutely the way that you should handle going about making changes to things. And that's what substantiates those changes. But when we got to the Blink nerf, I know they addressed it later. But in the moment, I was actually pretty upset because the only reason that they gave us for the change was one guy's experience. He said, and he even corrected himself, he said, I found it frustrating when I played.
That was for the
recovery.
For the Hungering
Blade.
Oh,
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm getting my wires crossed here.
Still correct.
But either way, we didn't get any substantiation. We got no statistics, no data, no numbers that said Blink was a problem. There was no explanation for it. And yes, and that trails into the other discussion with Hungering Blade. I thought the exact same thing. We're not getting the substantiation in terms of the statistics and data that would make me feel like that was a warranted change. But getting back to Blink, we didn't see any reasoning right off the get-go, and that was pretty upsetting. And then when we get the later, after the fact explanation for why that change happened, I still thought, okay, well, if lower skill players are having difficulty countering it, with the matchmaking system that Destiny has in effect, lower skill players are generally, not all the time, but generally, they are being paired up against other lower skilled players. I know that threshold has expanded a little bit, or the kind of player skill pool that they're pulling from for matches has expanded a little bit over the past few months. But even so, I feel like the lower skilled players, I want to be sensitive to them, but that means that the people that they're playing against who are using Blink are also probably around, give or take, the same skill level. So even when that player is using Blink, they may be just as disoriented as the person who's playing against it.
They certainly are going to be now.
Yeah, exactly. So I feel like that was a change that, in my opinion, agreeing with you, Holtzmann, was a little unwarranted. I can respect the goal. I can respect that you're trying to make the experience easier for the lower skilled player. I can respect that because I think that all gamers of all skill levels should be a priority all the time. But I just don't understand that change personally.
I agree. The one takeaway point I had from your statement was analytical data is great for using it as a reason why something has changed, but it can be very easily misguided. An example that I'll bring in one from another game and I'll bring in one from Destiny. The one from the other game would be like looking at Mercy's KD in Overwatch and then just deciding that it needed a primary buff. That just doesn't make any sense. The class is a meta class, right? I think we can all agree with that. Looking at that would be very bad if they changed it and they were claiming, hey, we changed it because she has the lowest KD. And I just start laughing at that point. But for Destiny, it would be like saying Defender Titan has the lowest KD or lowest maximum kills. And then we look at, well, what is the Defender Titan? It's a support class, right? The odds of you being able to slay like a buffoon are pretty slim. There are some that are really competent out there. But misguided analytical data can be very frustrating, especially for someone who feels as like they have a knowledge of the game. The average player who's invested a rather large portion of time can be frustrating. But I do like the fact that they are being transparent with that. Showing you analytical data is nice to observe and to take in, as long as it's well explained, because you can confuse people with data sometimes. So, overall, I would agree with you for the most part.
Which is interesting. I believe that's also the exact reason why we don't have stats on the guns in the game, like number stats.
There's no advanced tooltip feature?
Yeah. If I remember Bungie talking about it a while back, because it was in the beta, it was in the alpha, the early alpha, and then they took it away in the beta. They had all the numbers on the side there, for every single gun, like stability, 66, stuff like that. They thought it would get too confusing for players, which, yeah, it turns into a numbers game. But anyway, I think there's a couple more things. The Hungering Blade nerf. The last two we can just go over quickly here so we don't spend too much time. Hungering Blade, and then Hungering Blade, Quick Draw, and Landfall were nerfed kind of across the board. The Quick Draw perk was nerfed on the Hunters, and then Warlock on the Ophidian aspect gloves. Any comments about it?
Do you just want to go over them real quick? Each of us have our 3 points on it? I mean...
Yeah, if you want to talk about it, go for it. I feel we should at least address it.
Basically, Quick Draw being adjusted. I didn't see it needed to be adjusted personally. I've used Ophidian aspects on a Warlock for a little bit of time afterwards. I haven't felt that it has broken them. It is still worthy to be used. Honestly, Ophidian aspects probably one of the best exotics in the game, in my opinion. Landfall being changed, I didn't feel like it needed a change. Also, still didn't break it. It's still usable to a certain extent. But the recovery thing, the biggest thing, like we had mentioned earlier, TrueVanguard had said that the individual that was talking about it said that I felt it was difficult to manage a Blade Dancer with Hungering Blade. That was wrong. Don't ever use the I perspective as a developer. Do we as a team. That way you can kind of alleviate
Even though it was a joke.
Correct. Taken out of context, you have a huge target on your head, right?
Yeah.
Initially, I was like, wow, Blade's getting smacked again. Holy cow, these guys are lost. I don't know what they're doing. But it actually affected everything, whether that was intended or not. They claimed it to be a bug that they would work on, but they were taking feedback for it. With some time put into the game, I honestly like the change. Removing the cooldown from some of those recovery abilities like Cauterize, giving you a flat 60 health or so. I like it. You are no longer this instant, recovered tank after one kill. It requires competence over time, and that's good. So that's it.
Personally, again, with Hungering Blade, I understand the changes, especially if you're going to start taking away special ammo, which is one of the best ways to shut down a Blade Dancer. Sure, I get that. So I understand the change. My only issue is that the Blade Dancer, the Arc Blade Super, has been notably weak for some time. And so if you're going to... if it's one of the classes that the community is the most outspoken about in terms of its weakness and its need to be brought up to par, if the only things that you're doing to it are nerfs, essentially, I think that's an issue. I respect the nerfs and I understand the nerfs, but I think that at the same time you got to give the Blade Dancer mains something. You nerfed their blink, you nerfed their hungering blade, you nerfed their quick draw.
Your flux grenade kills max armor targets now.
I agree. And imagine year 1 blade now with this recovery nerf. Would you like that?
Yeah. Honestly, I would. And also they nerfed Shinobu's Vow. So pretty much, okay, wonderful. You buffed in some, very minorly. You buffed flux grenades, but you nerfed it in 4 different ways. And I feel like you got to make up for that somewhere else. I understand those nerfs, but you got to do something else for those people, those blade mains. I'm not a Blade Dancer main, but man, do I feel for some of my friends who are. I remember, I won't say his name just because I don't know if he would want to be remembered for this, but I remember before the reveal stream was even over, a good friend of mine who is a Blade Dancer main was absolutely livid, post after post after post on Twitter about how completely ticked off that he was. And I understood, because even though there were some good things in the patch, he was blinded by the fact that his baby that he's played from day one, that's been nerfed time for time for time, has been nerfed across the boards yet again. And so I feel like you got to give them something.
I agree with you. Yep, 100%. The constant nerf mentality met with 1 buff per 10 nerfs is not good. If you're taking something away, give something back. You know what I mean? Mm. Consistency being one of them. Like year 1 Blade Dancer worked rather well. Actually very well in my opinion. And maybe returning the consistency of the swing mechanic, reducing its cost overall to use its super, something to make up for it. And I kind of did a little bit of a double take now that you've mentioned it, and Blade has been consistently getting adjusted in the negative spectrum, so I feel for him.
Mm-hmm. It is unfortunate that this is mostly a discussion about PvP, but the Hungering Blade nerf and then the subsequent oh shit moment when it was bugged did have very substantial PvE ramifications too towards it, because Ward of Dawn is bugged now. It's easier just to name what isn't bugged at this point in terms of health regen. It's unfortunate that also really greatly affected the PvE sandbox, and this was really just meant to be some sort of PvP change.
Mm-hmm. And in a perfect world, we'd have to separate it, right? And then it wouldn't be a big deal, but it's too late into the game to want something like that, right?
Oh, yeah. Landfall. Reducing total time in Storm Trance was the other one that was kind of confusing to me. I think the group I was watching the reveal stream with, we all were like, wait, what? You're reducing total time in Storm Trance from Landfall? Not just increasing how much Ionic Blink takes away? Because let me tell you, that's the one that people are really looking at. But all right.
Yeah, in terms of that particular super, there are ways that I thought, this is just my opinion. I know other people believe differently, but when I look at the Storm Trance super, the things to me that make it maybe a little bit too powerful are things like the visual effect of being hit with it, how difficult it is to shoot through the shock, and on top of that, you've got the duration, which they did hit, but they didn't hit it for the right thing. I agree with you. Ionic Blink, they should punish you for the duration of the super when you use Ionic Blink, but also the range, the sheer range of the shock effect. The range on Storm Trance is incredible. How far you can reach with that shot. Those are the things, any of those things that I thought should have been addressed. But Landfall, I thought was pretty far into left field in terms of its being an issue that needed to be addressed.
Yeah. All right, we can move on to the 4th point here. Fix some issues with the sample plotter of exotics. I'm trying to remember the exact things that got changed here. Oh yeah, I think the main one that we can look at for PvP would be Truth. Mm-hmm. Truth reduced magazine size from 3 to 1, and then Universal Remote also had a couple of changes. Universal Remote was magazine size brought down from 5 to 3 and takes more time to reload. I think that's it as far as relevant PvP changes to a sample plot area of exotics.
Well,
what did you guys?
Are you also including armor? Because I know Shinobu's got nerfed as well.
Oh yeah,
I have actually seen significantly fewer Shinobu's vows being used since the patch.
Same.
Yeah, I agree. Truth's negation in terms of its overall, I don't know, single magazine size clip. How do you say that? Rocket canister? I don't know. Anyways, the ability to not have 3 loaded all at once is definitely a nerf, but I kind of like it because honestly, the Truth is one of the most effective rockets in the game, I would argue.
Yeah.
Yeah. In that being the case, reducing its magazine size now gives us a trade-off, and you might see some other people using different rockets. But at the same time, proxy debt has been adjusted a couple times now, right? And isn't quite the beast it used to be. So, I don't know. It's a bit of a trade-off now. So, I don't know if there's really a reason to run Truth. I'd rather just have the consistency of offering more than one rocket without reloading.
What did you guys think was actually going to get changed, or was going to get changed when they said fix some issues with the sample platter of exotics, at least in terms of the PvP sandbox landscape?
Well, the initial thing comes to mind is fixing bugs, but when it comes to exotics, I don't know if there are many known bugs with them.
It's like Astrocyte Verse just not doing anything.
Being completely useless.
And for me, and that's the prime examples, I didn't even know that was an issue. I honestly don't even know what the Astrocyte Verse even does, because I just don't use it.
It looks cool.
It's just a cool looking helmet.
Nice, I love it. That's cool aesthetics. Love that stuff.
Yeah.
But all right, but that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I guess I expected some more thoughtful and extensive tunings there, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's at the same time when they said fix an issue with the sample platter of exotics, my mind immediately went to Astrocyte Verse because it's the goggles. It does nothing.
And it didn't do anything after the patch.
Yeah, it just didn't do it. Still doesn't do anything. But as far as I really didn't know what I expected from that, and they did fix a couple of issues with some various exotics, I guess. Most notably, Young Wolf's Howl got changed, which was cool.
Nice.
Awesome.
We all use in PvP, right? Everybody?
I used it once, smash someone. I was like, well, all right, there went all my ammo.
There you
cool.
go, right?
Done.
And you're like, yes, greatest sword kill of all time.
Moving on to point number 5, which we already had kind of an extensive discussion about this, but supporting adjustments to special ammunition. This was kind of the clarion off in the distance telling us that some stuff's coming. We're changing special ammunition. Did you think it would be like as nuclear of an option as what we got?
I did not. I again kind of reaching back to goal number 1. I saw promote alternatives. So I thought that instead of taking away our special ammo, what we were going to do is make sure that primaries were consistent across the boards very thoughtfully and meticulously. So I thought that you may see some reduction, but I didn't anticipate this particular change. Personally, I think that special weapons have some of the most character in Destiny and provide some of the most memorable moments in Destiny. So I think that piggybacking off of that, even in the past, we've seen that you can have metas that are dominated by specific primary weapons without green ammo being a thing. I mean, I can remember back in year 1 when green ammo was, you never had to go looking for it. You just had it. You were pretty much at max capacity green ammo, 90% of the time. But we still used our primary weapons. I still mained. I remember when I first got my hands on the Last Word and I couldn't put the thing down. Sure, I pulled out my fusion rifle every now and then for 1 out of every 5 or 6 kills, but for the most part, I was using my primary. So we have proven that in the past you can have powerful primary weapons without taking people's green ammo away. So this current meta that we find ourselves in, you might say that it's a primary meta, but if it is, it's a forced one. And then in specific playlists, it's still a special meta. It's just all the weapons that bypass the special changes that are on top, clearly and definitively.
Yeah, I agree. I think the main issue with this whole miscommunication relies on the what the primary and special weapon words mean. I think in their eyes, primary means that is going to be your primary source of damage, your most used weapon. I would argue that it's the special weapon which is most used, and that your primary weapon is going to be the thing that complements that special weapon. Sniping preferably being used with a hand cannon. Shotgunners, you kind of have a little more leadway, but I would argue that players are going to use the weapons that have the greatest potential for kills. And in Destiny, it has usually been the special weapons that do that. Their snipers, their shotguns, their fusion rifles all have the availability of creating great dividends in terms of kills. And then primary gameplay to complement that. And I kind of feel like they're just constantly trying to achieve primary weapons being the most used weapons in Trials or even any game type. And I don't think that's what people want. I think people just want to be able to use all of their weapons and be prominent with all of them, but find their own little way to complement them together. And that's just my take on it.
It's a very difficult thing to kind of balance, at least in the game that they've created, because I don't know, there's so many different loadouts. I mean, a lot of people, I think, Ninja, you were saying that people, they want to use their special more, and there's kind of two types of players here. It's the player that picks what primary weapon that they use and then picks a secondary that goes along with it, or there's the player that picks the secondary that they use and then picks a primary that can complement it. And yeah, this special change definitely hurt the players that like to base their loadout more around their special change. Or their special ammo. But as far as supporting adjustments to special ammunition, I really didn't think we'd see this. I figured, maybe that we'd just lessen the amount of ammo that would get picked up from blocks. Stuff that we had kind of seen beforehand. Because in the past, we saw how bad the whole spawning without ammo change went with Trials, because they specifically did it to the Trials playlist, right? They didn't do it on any other one.
Exactly. Yeah, you're correct. And now look where we are again.
Yeah, it's a change that it feels like it just doesn't belong in Trials, but at the same time, it creates some very interesting, or it makes the gameplay a little bit more consistent overall in some other playlists. But the fun question is it worth it?
Exactly.
Is it worth it?
And what game type do you think pertains most of the player base right now? What do you think keeps people coming back? Trials, yeah, and yet it feels like every other game mode has been the focus point in terms of this special change. To me, when I first booted up Trials after a couple cards, I thought to myself, did they even test this? I honestly don't feel
it felt like a huge oversight, didn't it?
Exactly, and I honestly couldn't believe, or I couldn't fathom that the developers together played this and were like, this was a good idea. I want Trials to be the combination or correlation of a bunch of different abilities and weapons and being good with everything, right? Having the most potential to do almost anything to take out your opponents. And it was now dropped to this linear, occasional roller coaster of a super killing you. So, it's very frustrating.
I mean, I know we don't want to focus exclusively on Trials, but we do have to bring it up. Absolutely. It is the golden goose of Destiny. It has kept the Destiny PvP community coming back week after week after week after week. And I think that this is even reflected as a huge Twitch viewer. I watch a lot of Twitch. And the Destiny in the directory of Twitch is low. And then come the weekend, it jumps up several spots. Because of the lure of the Trials of Osiris. People love it. They absolutely do. But I think that this most recent change has put Trials in my opinion, and I know I can't speak for everybody, but in my opinion, it's the worst state that Trials has ever been in. It's the most two-dimensional and passive style of play that we've seen in the Trials of Osiris. And even so to the point where there have been times on the weekends, generally speaking for me, I'm hard-pressed to play anything but Trials in Destiny on the weekends.
You're talking to someone who hasn't played Trials at all this weekend, so I agree with you.
Yeah, and so of late, I am now pulled towards other things, be it other games or other playlists. But Trials has lost a lot of its appeal because my particular preferred way of playing has been not only is it hard to play those things, but I can't even do it anymore because my special ammo's been taken away. So I can't run around with my Defiance of Yasmin and go sky sniping, which was my favorite thing to do, back in the day. Absolute favorite thing to do. Now I got to wait around before I can get ammo if the rounds last long enough for me to get my ammo. I have to potentially leave my teammates alone to go get that ammo. And then with all the nerfs to snipers that they've taken, even sky sniping in and of itself is even much more difficult to do. So all of my favorite ways to play have just been consistently nerfed further and further and further. And so when you take away all these options, and you touched on this yourself, Ninja, when you take away all the options that people have for the playstyles that they have invented, which was one of the coolest things about Destiny in the past, is that you could invent your own playstyles and unique ways of approaching the game. But then it gets watered down into, a state where you're punished based on your initial decision. And you should never be punished based on your initial decision about what you're going to run, in my opinion.
And I agree with that.
That's where I'm at.
I think oh man, I just had a brain fart. I had a well thought out strand of things I want to say, and the old ninja brain just is like, hey, you need a Titan skate, and then complain about a shape, man. You don't got time for this. The adjustment, this is what I was talking about. So the inventory for managing things in Destiny is basically on the same technological advancement of an etch and sketch. It takes...
Got to explain that one.
Yes, and my argument for this is purely based on trials. First, you need to hit start and pull up your inventory. Then you need to just wait for your weapons to load, correct? Then you're going to have the standard time it takes for you to find what weapon you want to use, equip it, then exit the menu, and then go to green ammo box, then pick up that green ammo box, and then reload all of that ammunition. That is a very tasking thing in a round of trials that only lasts a minute and 30 seconds. With 30 seconds waiting to spawn ammo, right? So you now have 30 seconds of downtime to wait for green ammo, which arguably could be used to switch your weapons, but you honestly don't know if you're going to need that quite yet, right? Because you have your sidearm out. But then you go up to the green ammo box and you switch weapons and pick up the gun and then reload. You just dedicated literally 20 seconds worth of time that could be used to execute your opponent with your super, your primary, etc., just to equip a weapon that may or may not be used. The inventory management itself is too slow. If it were dialed down to a Hot Wheel choice, like on a D-pad, left D-pad for shotgun, right D-pad for snipe, hold it for 2 seconds, so you're concerned with players accidentally switching weapons on the fly. You then could have the availability of just having to run up to the green ammo box, hit left on the D-pad for 2 seconds, pick it up and reload and move on. But instead, you don't have that.
Yeah, if anything, if they're gonna keep this change, it would be really great for the overall pace of the game to have your special weapon just like it is with heavy. You pick up that box, boom, you got the ammo.
Reloaded.
It's in the
cutting down on downtime. I agree with that.
Yeah.
But playing as a main trials player on the weekends for trials help, I've been struggling to find the motivation to put myself through it. Trying to make big plays 1-on-2, 1-on-3 with a sidearm, and the occasional chance to pick up a shotgun, it's almost impossible.
It feels like a lot of those big play moments mostly come from like super usage,
Yeah,
exactly.
Trials is way too heavily ability focused, absolutely. And I think the various weapon changes across the months have led into that. And in my opinion, I think one of the greatest oversights in the history of Destiny was the introduction of scories. I think that in and of itself has slowed the pace of trials down to a screeching halt, where you're rewarding inaction so heavily. And I know that they are changing that, and I do actually really like the change that they're making. But
Agreed.
The fact that it got this far has always been completely mind-boggling to me.
That and Final Round are probably the two biggest moments where I was like, whoa, did you guys call in sick all one day and let the janitor do something real quick, or what happened? But yeah, I gotta agree, Scories is frustrating. And they initially award players super energy over time so that players who don't necessarily get a whole bunch of kills in the game can still get their super. I get that. I respect that. That makes sense. But awarding your players for creating friction together, literally rubbing into each other, or looking off into the distance at the vast scenescapes of the Mars map, Firebase or something, I don't know. And awarding them super energy for it just kind of boggles my mind. It's very frustrating to see three players doing absolutely nothing, getting their potential super that has the potential to kill your whole team. Like, that sucks.
Yeah. I don't want to take up too much more of y'all's time because y'all are all very, very busy days ahead of you, most likely. But one final thing is you guys are all in the kind of tournament play. And you guys just yesterday were both competing in one of the tournaments, correct?
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Most listeners probably don't actually, most people that are probably watching the video don't actually compete in that, but if anything, they do watch them. And I want to get you guys comments on how it plays out, because I got a couple of observations from how it plays out from watching the old previous meta to this current one. But in the competitive game, how has it, briefly explain how this change has affected it, and if it's like a positive or negative?
TrueVanguard, you can go first, man.
Okay, so I'm a bit of a black sheep in that community, I know. So I can't really speak authoritatively, but here are the two things that I would say regarding that community. First thing I would say is that when we're talking about changes to the game, I don't think that we should encourage the devs to pay too much attention to the competitive side of Destiny 1. I should say that. I should clarify. I don't think they need to give too much thought about the competitive scene, because it's a very, very small part of the community. And even though it does bring in some big viewership, it does so in very sporadic moments. Okay, there happens to be a tournament this particular weekend, so for one day it attracts a lot of viewership. For a very select few amount of people, percentage of the player base that's playing it. Don't worry about making changes around that community. They will take care of themselves. They will impose their own rules and regulations and boundaries. You focus on the community that you can control, and that is the overwhelming majority of the player base. Make sure that they are happy and appease those people. So, yes, these changes do affect that community, but I don't think you need to give too much thought to it. They'll take care of themselves. That's point number one that I would make. But point number two that I would make is this. You do want that community to exist. They're an important part of the community, small as they are. They are very, very important. So what you do need to do is make sure that every detail about a particular match can be controlled in a private environment. So I'm at a disadvantage because I've never had a rangefinder, rifle, barrel, anything drop. Make sure that the player can just, before the match starts, in a private match, they can just say, I'm going to use an AOS unit with these perks. Everything has to be customizable. When special spawns, how much you get, everything has to be customizable. Let them control their environment. So you need to give them the tools to have ultimate control. That is important because they are an important part of the player base. But when it comes to making your patches and your changes to the rest of the game, you don't need to consider them if you've given them full control of their environment. Those are the two things I would say. Give them control, but don't make changes around them.
I can agree with most of that. You are correct in terms of the viewership response for things like tournaments and such. That's when you tend to have the most eyes on that section of Destiny. I agree. And you touched base on some pretty good points between custom games and private matches. Private matches being the thing that's in Destiny, custom games being something like in Halo. Movement speed, shield regen time, overshield capability, weapon spawns, etc. Very, very good things you can adjust on the fly to create some very interesting game types and encounters. I agree with that wholeheartedly. Having access to everything to create the perfect game that you want for that game type. It's awesome. I love it. As an individual who played in the tourney this weekend, my biggest takeaway point was the inconsistencies that plague Destiny down to its core are extremely noticeable on the most competitive edges of Destiny. And one of the biggest ones I'll hit is melee inconsistency. Tracking your target, punching them, having no damage. Very frustrating. Very, very important part of what you can and cannot do as your Guardian. And having your punch make the animation but not actually do damage is very, very tilt-worthy. It can be very frustrating. But one of many bugs that are within the game that we won't see fixes for, probably for some time, because they're just other things that are too important, and I get that. But the bugs within Destiny, it just got to be ironed out. You got to promote that consistency. You promote that consistency, I think that's going to increase the overall lifespan of the game and the health of the community. And I'm hoping that with enough time and enough focus and enough hard work from the devs working at Bungie that have created this game we've all come to know and love for its good and its bad, it could create quite the environment. quite the environment. And like I've said plenty of times over, Destiny is a imperfect game, but it keeps bringing you back because when it works, it's a fantastic piece of work. Very well done.
Agreed.
All right.
I mean, it's easy to sit here and get nitpicky and criticize, but at the same time, I've never put this much time into any other game ever in my life. I love the game. So I do want to say that I do appreciate all the devs and the work and the hard work that they've put into making the game what it is.
I can't agree with you more. It's very, very easy to get negative in terms of mindset and stuff and be very vocal about it. And that's just because when we get frustrated, we tend to try to relieve said frustration by, talking about it, venting, right? And Destiny is no different. It's just the way it works. We get frustrated, we get the motivation to talk about it, and people tend to remember that the most, which is kind of a shame because, like you said, you've spent more time in this game than any other that you've probably ever played. I can agree with that. Way too much time in this game. But it's changed some things within my life, which is kind of crazy to admit. There's a lot of power in a $60 purchase. When you first picked up Destiny, did you think you'd have this much entertainment out of it?
Absolutely.
Oh, hell no.
I mean, you hit that $60 price tag, you're like, all right, sweet, I got maybe 4 or 5 months of entertainment. We're 3 years into a game. I don't envy them. They must have their hands full with the creation of Destiny 2 or whatever that title will be. And it's cool to see that they're at least changing their game that's this old. But I'm hoping they can refine some of that attention span to some of the underlying issues that are causing inconsistency and then work from there.
Well, I want to thank both of you for joining me today to talk about this stuff for like an hour and 30 minutes. And I went a little bit longer than I expected, but, I think we had a good time here. Where can, TV, you go first, where can people find you if they want to see more of your content or just general play?
For sure. TrueVanguard on YouTube, The TrueVanguard on Twitch, stream very regularly, and on Twitter, The TrueVanguard. Those are the 3 best places to find me.
Oh, I'm going to have a heart attack saying this one. But if you want to find me on Twitch, you can do twitch.tv/ninja_ with _ no _ and an L. So just ninja with no L with underscores of the space. I know it's a nightmare. You're going to have an aneurysm typing that. But that is the place to find me on Twitch. Also, the same very end URL for Twitter. But I appreciate you inviting me, Holtzmann. Hope you guys have an awesome rest of your evenings. Like I said, I can talk about Destiny for pretty much eternity. So whenever you guys need any input, feel free to ask.
Will do, man. Thank you both, and have a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you all for watching. By the way, if you stuck around to like this hour and 30 minute mark, I guess that we're on.